So, welcome Julian Lloyd Weber and Jiaxin Lloyd Weber to On the Couch with Rachel. Thank you so much for joining me today. I have read your wonderful memoir, Julian, and you open your book, Bows and Arrows, with an introduction to life in lively number 10 Harrington Court,
right,
with family, friends, cats, and even Mimi the monkey.
Mimi was before I was born,
Yes.
but I heard many stories about her.
I saw a photograph.
She was there for at least I think a couple of years in this block of flats in London.
Yeah.
And we had assorted cats for years. There was never a time without a cat there. And my father, only he could do that, decided with these cats to get what he called a pedigree mouse.
Yes.
How can that be? I mean, the end was so predictable, I didn't even put it in the book. Because, I mean, it's one day that was bound to end in tears, and it did.
Yes, and how do you determine what's a pedigree mouse?
I've no idea. But I was told this was a special pedigree mouse. It looked much the same to me. But
And what was the name of it again?
it was a rather nice sort of champagne brownie colour.
Oh, because it had champagne in the name of it, didn't
Yes,
it?
it's called Champagne Charlie.
Champagne Charlie. What a lovely name for a mouse. And Mimi the
I prefer
monkey.
the cat, personally.
You prefer the what?
The cat.
The cat, did you? Okay.
Yes.
And the cat and the mouse didn't fight at all?
They didn't really get on the best of friends now.
I can imagine not. So for the most part it was a very busy household, not just with animals but also incoming visitors.
Yeah, we had visitors all the time because my mother was a teacher, a specialist teacher of the piano to very young children. So these tiger mums would turn up with their kids and with their notebook and making fearsome comments, and occasionally a very bored-looking dad would come instead, but it was usually the tiger mums.
I'm guessing that your father was a very patient man.
He was, in a way. He was patient, and also he was out a lot,
Yes,
which helped.
yes, okay.
He was a director of the London College of Music, and he was very rarely in. Would never get home before about 7:30, and was out every day.
Mm-hmm. So he was a busy man then as well.
Yeah, he was a very busy man, and he also was a really fine composer who, we're talking about resilience, I know later, he perhaps wasn't the most resilient person because his music was very personal to him. He wrote in a very romantic style that was out of fashion. So in the end he simply stopped composing and kind of hid all his music away. And it was actually only after he died that I discovered just how much he'd written, which is sad because there's some beautiful things there.
Yes, I read as well that he wrote a beautiful piece for your mum on their wedding day.
Yes, he did, and I found that in manuscript, his own, writing, amidst a pile of music that was just discarded, sort of mixed up with old sheet music, Beethoven, piano sonatas. There was this piece of manuscript, and it said to Jean on the wedding day, and I think they must have played it together on their wedding day.
It's a lovely
for
thought to
violin,
have.
my mum used to play violin and organ, which was his instrument.
His instrument, yeah. And also you ended up recording up to 5 CDs worth of music of his, isn't that right?
Yes, in the end.
Yeah.
That much
So
music.
he had written a lot.
We're talking over 5 hours of music, and at first I only thought he'd written a handful of short pieces.
So he was a very talented man then.
He was a very talented.
But he hid it under a bushel, maybe.
Well, I think he could have stuck at what he really wanted to be was a composer, and he didn't stick at it like some people did. But it was a very unfashionable time for the kind of music he was writing, and I just don't think he had the stomach to read awful reviews of things that were very special to him.
Yes, and it does take a sense of resilience almost to deal with that criticism.
It takes a sort of stubbornness, doesn't it? It takes a kind of almost, well, I don't care, I'm going to write what I want, but he did care. He cared too much.
And some people do care too much about what others think.
Yeah, they do.
And I can relate to that myself in the business that I ran for 7 years, where I knew that I wanted to do things a certain way myself, and I wasn't really that bothered by what others thought, but like you said, there would have been.
That's good, but it's easier said than done, isn't it?
It's much easier said than done, and I think it takes a certain amount of life experience and a certain amount of getting up after difficult times to realise what really matters. We'll get into that a wee bit more in a while, but once you realise what really matters, you understand that people's opinions aren't going to pay the bills, and they're not all the be all and end all.
Certainly not.
Definitely not. So back to what you were saying about your mum was a specialist piano teacher for young children, so you did dabble in the piano for a little while.
But I didn't really like being taught by my mum, to be honest, and the piano was never really for me anyway. She had a tigress part to her, and she was not going to be thwarted by my lack of talent on the piano, and she took me off to an orchestral concert for children, which they used to have in those days. Now I don't think they do. And I spotted the cello in the orchestra, and I thought that looks far more interesting to me.
Yeah.
And so I asked if I could play a cello, and what arrived was this tiny little thing.
Yes.
So I was a bit put out by this, but I always enjoyed playing it. It was just a hobby, really. I didn't take it very seriously, but it was something I enjoyed.
Yeah, because you were only 5 years old when you got that.
Yeah, when I got my first cello.
Yeah.
And I just used to enjoy messing around on it, really. And I had a good teacher, and the more, what I soon learned was, the more you play it, the more you practice it, the better it gets, and the better it sounds, so therefore you want to do more.
Yes.
If you can't be bothered at all, it never gets any better, and in the end you probably give up.
Yeah, I can relate to your getting a 10th of cello whenever you were that age, because as a young age I wanted to play the guitar, and I got a little
guitar. That's no good.
A tiny ukulele almost. It was that small, but Santa brought it for me, so I couldn't argue with him.
No, I see.
And yes, I remember the disappointment.
Nice of him, though, wasn't it?
But at least you kept it going. I decided to throw a tantrum, and that was it. I didn't bother playing it anymore. So I was reading that part of your book and laughing to myself, thinking, I was such a brat back then, my poor dad.
It's great.
But I did play the clarinet in our orchestra.
My bow, didn't I? That was
you
very
broke your
naughty.
bow. That was very naughty. Yes, and you didn't take the blame for that.
No, because my mum was insisting I should take this cello on holiday, and I thought, well, how is that a holiday? If I'm going to be made to practice. So my bow suffered an accident.
That you sat on it by accident.
But by accident entirely.
Yes, yes. These things happen.
Well, that one did.
Yeah, that one certainly did. So another one of your hobbies as a young boy was collecting things, and one of the things that you allude to at the very early stages of the book is that you wanted to visit all the stations in the London Underground.
Yes.
When you were 9 years old, though, unfortunately, a very traumatic event happened on one of these journeys. I personally find this very jarring to read, and I just wanted to ask you about it and how it impacted you growing up.
Well, I found it, I must say, very difficult to write, because
I can imagine.
I try to be as honest as I can in this book about everything that's happened to me, and even the people I've worked with. I've tried to tell stories that were, I suppose, interesting to readers, but also were vital in my life. And this was an incident, which happened on the Piccadilly line when I was 9 years old. I was going to the final station on the eastbound line, the very top of the Piccadilly line, which is a long way. And in those days, a commuter now would not imagine it could be like this. They weren't open plan carriages. They were carriages with compartments, with high seats and a little window above them all, and you walked through those and sat where you wanted to sit. And by the time I sat opposite this rather respectable looking gentleman, there was hardly anyone left on the train. And basically, to cut a long story short, he abused me very badly, sexually abused me very badly, and I knew nothing about sex. Nobody had told me anything. It was something that was never discussed at home. It completely shocked me and traumatized me at that point. And because it was, I don't want to go into massive details, although I do say a little bit more in the book, but it was nasty sexual abuse.
Yes.
And I then became very nervous around adults, particularly men, I guess, and very withdrawn. And I had been a happy, laughing little boy. Suddenly I wasn't laughing. and I wasn't happy. And I talked a lot with my grandmother about it, who was living with us, lovely lady. I found her easier to talk to than my parents for some reason. Basically, now I come to think of it, because I knew that they shouldn't have been letting me out. Just running around on my own. Even then, people think it was safer. It's never safe.
It's never safe for a 9-year-old boy.
No, and I was going all over London during the holidays on my own, and I shouldn't have been. And finally, that caught up with me.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's the price you paid at that time. But
you see, my grandmother, she had a very difficult life, and she had shown her own resilience. My uncle, her son, had drowned when he was, I think, 18.
Yeah.
I never knew him, of course.
Yeah.
He'd gone out with a couple of school friends down in Dorset, and he was a very good sailor, and swimmer as well. They were good swimmers, and they took this boat out, and a storm came and it capsized. His two friends survived, he didn't.
Yes.
And so she was, devastated by that. And they moved from their home, and that's how they actually came to Harrington Court.
To Harrington Court, yes, because I remember you said in your book as well that your mum wasn't very best pleased to have her life uprooted.
She hated it at first.
Yeah, at first.
Because they were sort of in the countryside.
And she did make it her own in that she taught piano, and she was bringing up you and your brother Andrew.
That's many years later.
Yes, of course, obviously whenever she was an adult herself.
That's my grandmother's experience. She'd been through a lot of other things in her life which was certainly not easy, and so she was able to help me.
Yeah. So she had that openness as well for you to speak to her.
Yes.
And one of the questions I've written here is that support systems. Obviously, when I work with clients, we talk a lot about support systems and how vital they are to us when we're growing up. So your grandmother obviously was of huge support to you back then.
She was.
And your family, after that incident happened, you were able to go back, and they did contact the police, and there were investigations done, but unfortunately they weren't able to find the perpetrator. But back then, in like my father's 76 years old, and I know that he talks about that he has quite an old-fashioned approach to counselling, perhaps I would say, although he's very open to people needing help and support now with their mental well-being, because we've no other option but to admit that we do. But back in those days it was very much a get up and get on with it kind of a thing.
It was in my background, actually. It was particularly from my father, which is ironic considering that's exactly what he didn't do. But he could be quite hard.
Yes.
Quite. I remember there was one time somebody was talking about a colleague of his at the Royal College, and how they'd had a nervous breakdown or something, and my father said, well, we could all decide to have nervous breakdowns if we wanted.
Yes.
Well, that's quite a hard way of looking at it.
Yes, it's not something that we choose to have, certainly not. No. And so back then obviously there wasn't the sources of outside support like there would be nowadays, counsellors or people that you could have leaned on, so you very much leaned on your family and your peers.
Yes. I must say I didn't discuss it with
any friends
or anything at all, or at school, and in fact I'm not even sure I told them.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's just that their support is something that we talk about very openly now, but it's not maybe something that was just as openly available.
I don't really remember that being there at all.
Yeah, so it's quite a tough time for you back then, but you travelled alone a lot then in later life with your instrument, and I know that there are some funny anecdotes in the book where you talk about it needed its own playing seat.
It does. I mean, I had a very valuable cello, but also every cello is very valuable to the person who's playing it.
Yeah.
So if you don't want your cello to get smashed up, it has to have a seat. You can't put it in the hold. I mean, one or two times it might survive, the third time it won't. So I had a most of my playing career. For 30 years I was playing a Stradivarius cello,
Yes.
and there was no way that was going in the hold.
No, and I love how you personified the Stradivarius and Barjansky, is that how you pronounce the
It was
name?
called the Barjansky Stradivarius after a cellist a very famous cellist at early part of last century who was playing the instrument. It became known as the Barjansky Strad.
Very good, yeah. So you formed a relationship with this.
I really did, because
Yes.
and people think that's kind of funny to say you've got a relationship with a stringed instrument, but on the other hand, you travel alone with it. You spend a lot of time alone with this instrument all the time with you. It's your one companion through lots of extraordinary experiences, kind of almost intimate moments on the stage in front of thousands of people.
And
It's a very special relationship, and you need to get to know each other.
Yes.
You know, the better an instrument is, the better a cello is, the more personality it's got of its own, and you have to learn to work with it, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And I think that by the end we absolutely knew each other.
Yeah.
And there were one or two occasions where I felt I wasn't on form, or I wasn't on my best form, and somehow the concerts went well, and I remember once I felt the cello had really been on my side. It's a very strange feeling.
But I understand what you mean, because you said in an interview that I listened to that you get to know the instrument and the instrument gets to know you.
Yes.
And it is almost like you say, like a relationship.
I think until you've been in that situation, you can't really believe that kind of thing. You think it's an inanimate object, but actually then it's not. It responds.
That actually leads me to skip on a little bit into a question that I had about spirituality. So I know that you've alluded to your mum's spirituality, and that at times you were dealing with some physical ailments in your hand and different pains, aches and pains that you had, and you refer a couple of times in the book to a lady called Rosemary Brown.
Rosemary Brown. Now, she was extremely famous at one point because she claimed to have received music from composers who had passed away. So particularly favourites of hers were, well, I shouldn't say favourites, well, she was persuaded by them to take this music down. And she was only a housewife who was untrained in music. That was true, and that was remarkable. The problem, as far as I was concerned with that, is the pieces that arrived weren't really very good.
Yes, okay.
And so people disbelieved her. But what I did find was that she also did spiritual healing, and there's no question in my mind that on 2 occasions she really helped me. I had a problem with my first finger, getting terrible shooting pains in it. I went to see loads of doctors, and they couldn't do anything with it. They couldn't see anything wrong. It was scanned and all that. And she just, she basically herself healed it. I could feel her, the heat.
The heat, I remember reading that, yeah.
And I didn't believe her. She said, "Oh, just rub a little warm olive oil into it every night." And but I could feel this heat while she was doing it, and it never happened again.
She also
another time I had a kidney stone.
Yes.
Second time I'd had a kidney stone, and it was stuck. And they didn't have lasers and things in those days for it. They couldn't get it was stuck. It was not passing. I was given some very strong pills that were supposed to open up your tubes. It doesn't sound good, does it?
No,
And it
sounds very
wasn't
painful.
shifting. And in desperation, almost forgotten about it. My mother called up Rosemary Brown and said, "Could you help, because my son's in agony and this stone is simply not passing. I couldn't eat. This had gone on for 10 days. I was throwing up water. I was really ill."
Ouch.
And she came round, put her hands on me, prayed a little bit. I'm not quite sure who she was praying to, but I could feel this heat. And she said, "The stone's beginning to pass now. It's going to feel worse. It's going to get even worse," which I couldn't imagine.
No.
Was its high scale pain, that high scale pain, you're actually wiggling around in it.
Yeah, I've seen it.
After an hour or two, I could feel it was breaking up. The stone was breaking up.
Yeah.
And it passed.
Amazing. And there's a lovely story towards the end of the book where you allude to Rosemary Brown again just before her passing in 2000.
Well, now we bring Jiaxin in because I was going through all kinds of matrimonial issues at the time and was in an extremely unhappy marriage, really desperately unhappy marriage. And then I met Jiaxin in New Zealand, and I think it was even the second, because I met Jiaxin several times with the 2-year intervals in between, because I was just touring there, and the third time something clicked between us. So that was like over a 5-year period, and after that had happened, you sent me a message which I picked up on my phone, because I didn't know I was going to see Jiaxin again, and you just said, just let me know you've arrived safely, that's all I need to know. And I started thinking maybe I can hope that this might work out, and we had conversations, eventually it did.
And Rosemary told you?
And Rosemary had said a long time before that the person I was planning to marry was not the right person for me, and it was making a big mistake. And then she said, but you have met the right person, you just don't know it. So I was scrabbling through my address book,
trying to find who this could be.
Who could I have met? And you weren't in the address book, because but she was right, because I had met this person,
met her.
but it was not on that kind of level.
It's so interesting. I find that part so interesting, that she was able to help you with your physical health as well as...
Well, she was an extremely perceptive person. I don't know what you could call that. And I don't want to get into that kind of spiritualism, because I think people can depend on it too.
No, absolutely.
But
and it's all
I know
much,
is that she was onto something.
She knew something. She was right about a lot of it. So at one stage of your career, to talk about boundaries and using your voice, you recognise the power in using your own voice. I see you're looking as if to say, what is she going to come out with here? But you were insistent that Yehudi Menuhin worked on a recording with you. And I find it interesting how you refer to how you said, Dad always had an irrational fear of authority, Mum was merely in awe of it. And how did it feel to have your voice heard at that time? Because you decided then, I'm not sure if you remember what I'm referring to, but you decided then that you were going to insist that Yehudi Menuhin became part of a recording that you were doing?
Well, the thing is, this was Elgar's cello concerto.
Yes.
And Yehudi Menuhin had worked with Elgar himself. He recorded the violin concerto, legend, one of the great recordings of recorded music history. And when he was 16, he recorded with the elderly Elgar conducting his violin concerto. It's one of the absolute classic standout recordings, a brilliant recording. And he was still alive, Menuhin was still alive, a great musician, conducting a lot himself and wasn't playing so much. And I wanted him to conduct my Elgar recording. And the record company at the time, Philips Classics, part of the big Universal group, they didn't want him because they thought he wasn't modern enough, he wasn't trendy enough, he was the past.
He was done.
And they wanted, young conductors who honestly had no connection with his music at all. And I resisted. I just said, well, because I'm putting myself on the line. It's one of the great cello concertos, and particularly for a British musician, it's the great cello concerto, and you were judged by that. So I couldn't see the point of making a recording, another recording, because there have been many great recordings of that work, without someone who had a special connection with the music. Well, why would it be different? Why? And it did work out very well. He was wonderful.
He seems to have been, and he also said to you at one point that we are not robots, we are human.
Yes, I was having a little bit of a problem with some of the bowing in the very fast movement. I was overthinking it. I wanted to be absolutely perfect, and in the end, it's like the centipede, isn't it? You ask him how many legs he's got, and he can't walk, and it was a bit like that. And he was so understanding. A lot of conductors could have said, well, you don't seem playing good, I don't want to, no. And then, of course, that would have made it much worse. But he was as understanding as could be. And
him saying that allowed you to be creatively free again, almost, to give you that power again.
It was a great help to me.
And I thought that was a lovely moment.
Well, he was a lovely man, and there are not so many conductors you could say that about.
Yeah, absolutely. there are challenges in every industry, aren't there, in different ways. And in saying that, there are a few times that you refer to, auditoriums and different places that you've played that are almost built and designed for orchestras, but that actually don't have the right acoustics, or they don't have the...
Well, particularly some of the more recent halls, they seem to have, again, overthought them, over-designed them, and in the end, you can't beat that shoebox shape.
Yes. Yeah.
With the right materials, with wood and no carpets on the floor, and that is a wonderful acoustic for classical music.
Yeah.
And you put rock music in there, and it's too resonant, it's too echoey, and it doesn't work so well.
There's a science behind that all, isn't there? Yeah.
There is a science,
Yeah.
but it's a very basic science. It's not rocket science,
No.
as people keep saying.
Yeah. No, I get that, definitely. So you famously worked with your brother Andrew on a recording called Variations. They say that working with family can often be challenging. I sometimes work along with a sister of mine in creative projects too. So I just wanted to ask you, what was your experience like?
Well, it came about as a result of a bet on a football match.
Yeah.
We were both Leyton Orient supporters, and this time we were going down to the dreaded, for the first time in ever, I think actually, the dreaded 4th division in those days. And we needed a point, a draw in our last game. And Andrew had been promising to write a piece for me for years. He'd already done Joseph and Superstar, and he wanted to write a cello piece. He had this idea, and it wasn't happening because he was so busy on other things. And I said, okay, you think they can't do this, I think they will do it. If we get that point or even a win, you've got to write me the piece. And he took the bet and he lost.
Yeah.
So he had to start writing the piece.
Yeah. So
it was funny, and it became the theme to the South Bank show. Was really successful.
Yes, I read
recording.
that. Yeah. So in that case, your team helped you out there.
Yeah, they
massively.
did. And yeah, actually, the Leyton Orient Football Club, I presented them with a gold disc soon, 5 weeks after its release, I think, and it hangs still to this day
Amazing.
in the chairman's office.
Fantastic. What a lovely story. And then you refer to the 1997 concert in Hong Kong as the most memorable concert of your life. It was an historic concert for sure, for many reasons, but what made it so memorable for you?
It was the final changeover from British rule to Chinese rule in Hong Kong. It was the night before, and I was playing Elgar Cello Concerto, this time conducted by Neville Marriner and his Academy of St Martin in the Fields. And I knew it was going to be a special concert, obviously. All the politicians were there. It was absolutely sold out, packed. From the British were there, all the Chinese were there. And the first half ended with the Elgar. The second half, we were, I won't say removed, but the second half was a Chinese orchestra, Chinese conductor, and a new work Chinese composition. So the Elgar was a complete end of an era, and it's so symbolic, especially that very moving and in a way desolate piece of music. And as it got to the end, there was this kind of change of atmosphere which I felt very strongly. The closing bars of that piece are very emotional, and it just felt like this kind of weight of emotion, and that the audience were feeling it too, and the orchestra, and of course the conductor, Marriner, wonderful conductor, and me. We all felt it, and I don't think I've ever played the end so slow.
Lovely. There's
Never.
such a huge symbolism in it, though, isn't there?
Yes.
That you're handing it over to the Chinese people again. And
yes, and it's I mean, Elgar does somehow conjure up a particular kind of Englishness.
I was listening to
and you
Elgar this
can't-
morning.
It's almost hard to say how he does it, but that just felt extraordinary.
Yeah, sounds like a very memorable moment for you, absolutely. Unfortunately, you did reach a point in your career where you simply had to stop playing. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, it happened in the middle of a concert. It was in 2014. I played for about 10 minutes, and suddenly I felt, I can't hold the bow properly. What's wrong, you know? And I had no strength in my right arm. And I knew there was something. I never felt anything like that. It wasn't like it was hurting. Just had no power. And I knew it was something really bad. it wasn't over practice or anything like that. And actually next day I went off to these experts who put lots of electrodes on my arm, and they tested me and gave me kind of power tests, and there was some of the things just weren't working. The nerves, they weren't working at all. There was no response. And so obviously there was something wrong. So I had an MRI scan on my neck, because that's where I was told the problem was emanating from. And they could see that there's a herniated disc pressing on a nerve. And it still would be, that's never going to change. But it doesn't give me pain, but that will always be there, that I will lose that power after a certain amount of playing. So I had to announce after a while, there was no way around it, that I had to stop. Because the possible operation that could have been done was dangerous. And then I was told, which was the final straw by the 1 out of 3 surgeons who agreed to do it, I was told, well, it might not work anyway, because maybe the nerve's irretrievably damaged by now. Well, I thought, this is no option. So I had to announce that I was stopping. And then I had a terrible year where suddenly I was earning actually nothing. Things in my diary I wanted to do all my life, like there was a date to play Shostakovich Concerto in Moscow, which, I mean, that's the sort of thing that just extraordinary, would have been amazing.
You'd have dreamed of,
and had to cancel everything, and wasn't making any money, and also, like, mentally didn't know what to do with myself.
Your whole identity must have been shifted.
I kind of didn't have an identity. I wasn't playing concerts, and I didn't want to play the cello. I didn't want to play it, not at all, because I thought, what's the point?
It must have been devastating for you, and also for Jiaxin as well. You were lined up to play some concerts with.
We were playing
Julian
a lot of concerts together. It was a very, very difficult time, and I didn't want to play. People said, well, surely you would play for fun, but it wasn't fun, because I couldn't. I've been playing concerts for 40 years. That's what I did. Suddenly, I couldn't do it.
And for someone who was always such a determined person, and who persevered through pain and through grief and through loss and through all the challenges that life faced, you faced in your life.
Someone like that, I just couldn't beat that. But what I was interested in, and that's why it is good to have interests that are not exactly the same as what you do. I was very interested in young musicians, and in trying to encourage them, and the whole psychology of why one would want to do music, and why another wouldn't, why some get much better when they practice, others don't. What is it that makes someone want to be a musician? So that always intrigued me, and I'd set up this program with the Labour government, it was at that time in England, called In Harmony. And the idea was to bring music to children from underprivileged backgrounds, couldn't afford to, parents couldn't afford instruments, just not impossible for them to do that, and couldn't afford the tuition. And unfortunately, it's gone out of a lot of schools, particularly in the areas where we set those projects up. They would never have got to play music.
And you've reached 200,000?
We have now. We have. The project's still going all these years later. But because I'd done that, I had some experience with, not only was I interested in it and enjoyed working with the young musicians, I had experience doing it. And this job a year later came up at Birmingham Conservatoire, as it was then. And I went for it. I thought, this is something I think I can do. And I got the job, slightly unexpectedly, because I didn't have, the tick the box previous experience of running a music college. But it was successful. We got the royal title while I was there, because they said the work was really high standard.
Brilliant.
And I was lucky to get that job. But on the other hand, I did persevere through that. filled in this massively long job application, went through some grueling experiences of being interviewed not only by existing staff there, but also all these university professors that were quite daunting. And I think it was my determination to get it, and maybe to conduct the interview in a slightly unorthodox style.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, if you give me this job, this is what I could do for you, and you really need to do this.
Yeah, you need me more than I need you.
And I remember showing them some films of me talking about music and this kind of things, which wasn't really on the, you weren't really supposed to do that.
Yeah.
But,
So you've been a risk taker all along.
I guess.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of taking risks.
No.
And in fact, on this tour I'm going to be doing of Ireland, I am taking the risk of saying I'm going to play again all through the tour.
I love that. I was just going to come to that. So it was your daughter Jasmine who inspired you to play again?
It was. She
After a long
overheard a
time
conversation after 12 years. She heard a conversation that was going to be a 75th birthday concert for me in London, and we were discussing, you know, who was going to be on that programme. It was never thought that I was. And then she said, "Oh, I wish I'd heard you play in concert." I mean, she wasn't in the meeting; she just heard us talking about it.
Yeah.
I wish I'd heard you play a concert, Dad, and that kind of hit home.
It pulls on the heartstrings a bit, doesn't it? When it's your own
I had 9 months, and I thought, surely maybe I can play something.
So you picked up the bow again.
I did, and I played a beautiful piece by Fauré, Elegy, for 8 minutes at Wigmore Hall.
Lovely.
And so I think, well, okay. It was only a few months ago. I'm going to try and play on this Irish tour.
Well, good luck with it, and I'm looking forward to it. The tour starts in August, and it starts in the Bardic Theatre in Donegal, which is actually my local theatre, so I'll be there.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to it.
Excellent.
And you'll be travelling the north and the south of Ireland.
Yes.
And Jiaxin, you're going to be playing a couple of beautiful pieces by Bach, is that right?
Yeah, 2 Bach suites.
2 Bach suites.
Yeah, first half.
Beautiful. In the first half, and then the second half of the concert will be a Q&A, is that right?
There will be Q&A. I'll be showing some videos of people I worked with in the past. I'll read a little bit from this extraordinary volume, and Q&A with the audience. They can ask basically whatever. It's free for all.
Yeah, well, they can ask whatever they want. Whether you answer is up to you.
True.
So just to finish off, I usually like to ask my guests this question. In terms of, if you could visit yourself as a young man, young Julian, at whatever age you choose, what age would you go back to, and what would you say to him?
Well, I would say 16, because I love being 16. You know, you feel I was doing well on the cello. I won a couple of scholarships to music colleges, and I just you kind of feel on top of the world because you haven't quite got into that nervous stage yet.
Yes,
you know, after I'd gone to the college, I started getting more worried about performance and that sort of thing. But then I felt on top of the world, so I go back to that.
Yeah, and what would you say to young Julian?
Well, a very young Julian.
Well, no, keep it going. Like at 16, whenever you were at that age.
I would say, well, you're going to go through some tough times, but you will come out the other side. But you know, don't be scared when you do get to those times, because everybody has them, and you've got to find a way through.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Julian and Jiaxin. I wish you every success with your tour and with your lovely book, Bows and Arrows.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me on the couch today.
Pleasure.
Take care. Thank you very
so
much.